I don't think a lot of the reflection at all in any of them. It's all about, and as it would be in the House of Representatives, retaining power. Because in this case, the two big parties are in government together and losing market share all the time, and market share in this case is elections. It's not very good. You know, that's somewhat worrisome to me that they're easy pickings for the LaFontaines of the world, because all he has to do is be against things. He doesn't have to do anything. I'm against, you know, these people in collusion, and it's a good narrative. It's a good narrative. I think the Greens are probably the most interesting party to me outside, because their leadership are having an argument about what are we for? Are we libertarian or not? Are we really free market or not? Because all our hippie kind of ethos, a lot of us have been rather successful, and we're not real happy with the tax rate, and we're not happy with the government, which we used to see as, I believe, the man, telling us what to do. So there is a libertarian streak there, which means they and the frees can work together, except, as you both know, culturally they're very different kinds of people. Indeed, I think they're beginning to have a non-tribal argument, which is interesting. Too often, German politics is tribal. American politics can be very tribal too. But the SPD seems to me spend their time being afraid of the left. That's all they talk about to me. You know, they're terrified of the Linke, don't know what to do, want the market share back. Do they move left? Do they stay in the center? They don't know. The CDU are scared because 3 of the 5 parties are on the center left, and so there's an inbuilt majority against them in the medium term. The smarter ones there are figuring that out, meaning they've got to flirt with the Greens. Well, that's a smart tactical move, but my answer would be on the basis of what policies? Okay, the politics, you're right, I'm very clever. Now, what policies do you agree with with the Greens? Can you dangle in front of them? The environment is an obvious one, it would seem to me. Good, thanks, John, writing the environment. If they're having to write down the word environment, there's a problem. I'm sitting over a beer coming up with this. So they're a couple steps behind, but they are seeing the political problem there, I think, a little bit. The Free Democrats, in theory, I should vote for them, given my ideological proclivities. I couldn't vote for them because I know them. Let me put it like that. There are some good guys there, but generally I know them. If I were voting here, that puts me in a terrible spot. Again, the Greens are interesting, and the Linke are sitting, observing market share go down. I worry a little bit about what happens here when the economic numbers, which are so horrible, quarter-on-quarter numbers just came out 7% down in Germany. I mean, that's an unbelievable number. When the kind of automatic stabilizers, the shock absorbers begin to wear thin, I worry about the summer here and these outside parties sniping. But what do I think about the reflection in general? Not a whole heck of a lot, but again, part of it is what you guys were saying, systemic. If the 2 major parties are in power, nobody really lost, so there is no real incentive to think through what we're doing, particularly if the SPD lose, if the CDU are the largest vote getter. That's a really interesting moment for, I think, what you're talking about, because do they then say, we really need to go into opposition and not just run a technocrat like Steinmeier and really think through, are we for Schroeder's reforms or are we really not? You know, that's an issue that needs to be sorted out to a majority's happiness. Or do they go back into a grand coalition where you don't have this discussion yet again, not much gets done, these other 3 parties gain market share, and aren't very reflective. So to me, that's almost the key moment. If nobody wins the majority, and nobody will, and the CDU come first, which they probably will, and the SPD comes second, which they will. I mean, there's a lot we know. What did the SPD do? Becomes key to the whole system. But if I had to pick a reflective group, it'd be the Greens, because there's this elite that get these changes, and then they say, but the people that vote for us are not with us on this stuff at all. You know, going into coalition with the CDU for the Green rank and file is a nightmare. And even if it's not over whispers here with the Green elite. Well, again, I'd say what we said earlier, talk to them. You know, that's your job. And if you really believe that, start a new party or move this party there. But, well, no, that's very difficult. Yeah, that's why we pay you. It is very difficult. But that's where they are. But that, to me, is another interesting cliff moment. Do they jump and say to their, you know, have a discussion with their rank and file? You know, sometimes we're going to have to agree with the Frees and the CDU and the SPD. And if we're flexible and know what we stand for, we can be the kingmakers of this new system. We can really affect change from within. Or do we want to be an outside party, you know, back to our throwing bricks at cops days and not grow up? It's up to them. It's up to them, but have the discussion. There are too few discussions here. And when there are discussions, they're over a drink in a quiet corner and they're off the record. They're psychological. It's a great question. I think they're not going back to the real world. Exactly. What I'm saying is they think they are, and they're going back to the fantasy world, that there are these restrictions that aren't on them. If you can be adroit and flexible and open and charismatic and eloquent, and we'd like that in our leaders. You know, it's those good qualities. I don't think there are these restrictions. I think people in Germany would be very open to a real discussion about all kinds of things if you treat them like adults. And one of the things Obama did was not by dumb it down, talk to the Americans in cartoons, talk to the Americans in bumper stickers, talk to the Americans in slogans. He couldn't have a more nuanced position on Guantanamo, for instance. You know, he's run into trouble on this, but I honestly think in the end he'll get it done because people, you build up credibility. You build up bingo chips, as we'd say in the States. And he's got some bingo chips because he leveled with people about race. When the Reverend Wright thing came up, he gave this very thoughtful, wonderful speech saying, look, I see racism is a huge problem in America. I'm in a unique position to talk about it. I have white and black relatives. Here are the problems from both sides. Let's not just talk about white people. Here are the problems of the black community. Illegitimacy is a horrendous problem. Fathers not caring about their kids. Incarceration, it's not all due to racism, as he said. It's due to not having options, but then doing destructive, horrible things that racism shouldn't blame. It's an extraordinary speech. And people on both sides said, this guy is different. And I think that's what Germans would say if they heard that. This person is talking differently about the real world I live in, where blacks and whites are both to blame for some of these things, where the elite in the United States doesn't pay attention, where the neocons are talking about the Roman Empire and I just want my mortgage paid. I'm just concerned about that. And I think he really got that. I mean, you saw McCain running around like a headless chicken during the economic crisis. Obama, cool, calm, unflappable, talking to people. His demeanor. These accrue bingo chips. Then you can do the tough stuff. You can use these chips and say, trust me, here's why. And I think that the Germans saying, well, it's really difficult and I have to go back to the real world where I'm really castrated and can't do anything, is not the real world. That's, I'm sure, not why they entered politics. And they listen to their advisors say, always do the safe thing. Don't shake things up. Stay in line. Be polite to your seniors. Well, if Obama had done that, he'd be some junior senator from Illinois that nobody but me had heard of, sitting on the subcommittee on South Asia. And none of us would be a trivia question. None of us would know who he was. If you grasp this, I think that there is this market share, but I think that I think their answer is cynical. I think it's very cynical. To assume that they can't talk to people because the people won't understand, is what they're saying. Utter nonsense. I know very few people as well educated as the Germans. I can't go to my coffee shop if I write something in the paper but somebody accosts me about, I didn't like that, or I did like that, or, you know, I'm just here for the coffee, guys. But there is that groundswell there if you tap into it. I see it in writing and doing think tank stuff. People do listen. You know, I write something people like or don't, you get 100 responses by people on the weekend who obviously have nothing better to do. Isn't that great? So I think their fake cynicism is not the real world. And I think that if it is the real world, the answer is still the same. Fix it. You're not victims of history. Fix it. Fix it. That's what democracy is about.